The faint glow of dawn seeped through the bedroom curtains as I slowly awoke. Groggily, I reached across the sheets, expecting to find Martin beside me, but instead found his side of the bed empty and growing cold. Strange, he's usually still sleeping at this hour unless... A soft creak from the closet grabbed my attention. I stilled my breathing, feigning sleep, as Martin emerged tiptoeing towards the bedroom door. He was already fully dressed in one of his crisp suits. "Martin," I called out, my voice laced with confusion. "Where are you going so early?" He froze, cursing under his breath before turning to face me with a tight smile. "Morning, hon. I've got an early meeting with a new client, that's all. Important deal I can't afford to miss." My eyes narrowed at his vague explanation. Martin was usually so forthcoming with details about his real estate dealings. "At the crack of dawn? That's unlike you." "Yeah, well, this guy's an eccentric type. Wants to meet at some scenic overlook to discuss listing his property at sunrise." Martin shrugged as if it were the most normal request. "Gotta do what the client wants, right?" I pursed my lips, mulling over his words but deciding not to press further for now. As a freelance editor, I know better than anyone how to read between the lines, and the nagging uncertainty clouding Martin's tone spoke volumes. With a quick kiss that felt more obligatory than loving, Martin hurried out, the front door clicking shut behind him. I remained in bed, my mind spinning as suspicion took root. When had he last worked so hard to impress a client? Ever since those shady real estate investors had swept into town, buying up prime properties left and right, his deals and our income had become inconsistent at best. Yet just last week, Martin had surprised me by putting a down payment on the dream home we'd been saving for. He claimed to have struck a lucrative deal with a big client. At the time, I was so delighted by the prospect of finally escaping our cramped apartment that I didn't think to question the details. But now, on the heels of his strange disappearing act, unease churned my stomach. I flung off the covers, determined to investigate. If Martin thought he could lie straight to my face, I would equip myself with the truth, no matter how painful. The smell of fresh coffee beckoned from the kitchen as I shuffled in, sleep still weighing heavily on me. I moved towards the counter where Martin's phone lay abandoned and quickly scooped it up. My heart pounded as I entered the passcode, our dating anniversary, so predictable, and pulled up his messages. That's when I saw it. Pages upon pages of flirtatious texts from some contact labeled Client 9. Intimate photos and innuendos laced every message, the latest of which read, "Can't wait to take you to our special spot at dawn, babe. Hurry, I'm waiting." The phone slipped from my trembling hand and clattered against the tile as tears stung my eyes. How many nights had Client 9 lured Martin away under the guise of shady business deals? Why had I been so blind? No, I wouldn't be the fool any longer. Whoever this Chris was, I vowed to uncover every last detail about their insidious relationship with my husband. The truth would turn their dawn rendezvous into a brutal morning after. When Martin finally slunk home that evening, I was waiting. The smell of his cheap cologne wafted through the apartment as he shuffled in, head bowed. Well, how was your big important meeting?" I asked coldly, eyes narrowed. Martin started, clearly not expecting me to be up. "Lila, you're still awake?" "Don't play dumb with me." I stepped towards him, holding up his phone so he could see the incriminating texts displayed on the screen. "I know all about your Client 9. Who is she, Martin?" His face paled as his eyes landed on the explicit messages. For a moment, he seemed to wrestle with what lie to spin. Then his shoulders sagged in defeat. It's not what you think, babe. I can explain." I scoffed loudly at his feeble excuse. "Explain? Were you not just exchanging naked pictures and sexting with this woman? Is that just how you schmooze all your real estate clients these days?" No, of course not," Martin sputtered, finally meeting my furious glare. There was fear in his eyes, but also a sickening glimpse of desperation, like a caged animal seeking any possible exit. "Then what possible excuse could you have?" I shouted, throwing the phone at his feet in disgust. "Who is this Client 9 you've been sneaking around with at the crack of dawn? Another one of your sordid business partners trying to buy up half the town?" For a moment, rage seemed to steal Martin's expression. His lips curled into a sneer as he took a step towards me. "You want to know who she is? Fine. Her name is Avery. She's a young, brilliant real estate developer I've been working with on some lucrative investment opportunities." His gaze dropped meaningfully to my body. The kind of woman who actually keeps a man satisfied, if you know what I mean. White-hot anger lanced through me at his callous insinuation. I recoiled, hand stinging from where I'd struck him across the cheek. Martin hissed, cradling his reddened face as his eyes bored into me with intense loathing. Any remaining love in his stare had shriveled and died. "You hit me, you crazy bi? Don't you dare!" I roared, cutting him off. Every shred of our once passionate marriage seemed to be crumbling to dust between us. In that moment of icy silence, the full scope of his betrayal finally crystallized. Months, maybe years of lying and cheating laid bare. Clearly our vows, our decades-long partnership, meant nothing compared to chasing the next dirty deal with his newest squeeze. Tears sprang unbidden to my eyes, though I fought to blink them away. I would not allow Martin the satisfaction of seeing me emotionally broken. Not after everything he'd done. "Get out," I gritted through clenched teeth, jabbing a trembling finger towards the door. "Take your lucrative opportunities and your whore and get the hell out of my home." For a long moment, Martin simply stared at me mutely, perhaps finally recognizing the cold fury simmering behind my words. Then, with a look of mingled hatred and fear, he turned and slunk out like the coward he was. Only once the door had slammed did I finally allow myself to crumple to the floor in racking sobs. My husband, my life partner and best friend for over 10 years, was gone, replaced by a hollow, money-chasing stranger. But this was not the end, I vowed. No, this was just the beginning of making that bastard pay for what he'd done to me, to us. No matter what it took, Martin would atone for his sins, and I already had the perfect idea of where to start digging up the proof to destroy him. The next few days passed in a blur as I dove headfirst into investigating Martin's sordid activities. I was a woman possessed, fueled by heartbreak and the burning desire for vengeance. Using my old connections from teaching, I leveraged every resource to dig up dirt on not just Martin's mistress Avery, but also his shadier business partners and deals. The more I uncovered, the more disgusted I became. It turned out Avery was the ambitious daughter of a wealthy property developer, muscling in on all the prime real estate around town. Young, beautiful, and dripping in entitlement, she seemed to have her pretty manicured claws sunk into every shady dealer and corporation looking to gentrify the area. And right at the center of it all, like a greedy parasite, was my husband. Feeding off Avery's affluent connections to broker under-the-table deals that slowly bled our community dry of affordable housing and opportunity, all in exchange for money coursing into their pockets. Just thinking about the scale of their misdeeds made me ill. That my husband, my once caring, ethical life partner, could be so selfish and evil, it was a harsh awakening I wish I'd never received. But the worst was yet to come. Because the more I prodded, the more snippets of tawdry details about their affair also came to light. Clandestine meetings at high-end hotels and clubs that catered to Avery's elite crowd of trust fund brats, hushed hideaways where they doubtlessly consummated their twisted desires, even sickeningly personalized pet names like Kitten and Hot Stuff that turned my stomach. The final insult was learning about their so-called special spot for pre-dawn trysts, a secluded overlook on the edge of town with a view of the historic district I'd fallen in love with when we first moved here years ago. Just imagining the two of them entangled together as the sun crested that breathtaking horizon was too much to bear. That was my line in the sand, my life's dream home that we'd scrimped and saved for, the cozy community we'd sworn to support and nurture together. Martin had perverted it all in pursuit of his greed and lust. I knew then that he needed to pay dearly for his sins. That smug, despicable gold-digger Avery as well. People like them couldn't be allowed to trample all over the lives of decent, hard-working folks just for the sake of lining their pockets. Which is why, when Terry, an old high school pal working private security, rang me up later that day, I was ready. Having filled him in on the sordid details, he was equally incensed at how low Martin had sunk. "I've got the location of their next little rendezvous," he muttered into the phone line, disgust coloring his tone. "If you want to catch the lovebirds in the act, just say the word and I'll make sure we're there." My jaw clenched at the thought of witnessing their intimacy with my own eyes. But I knew I needed undeniable proof of Martin's treachery to truly make my case, to bring his whole sordid charade crashing down once and for all. "Do it," I said simply, surprising myself with the cold vengeance in my voice. "I want to see the bastard burn for what he's done." Terry exhaled heavily. "You got it. I'll text you the details." As I hung up, I could feel the craving for revenge throbbing like a possession deep within me. Soon, very soon, Martin and his good-for-nothing mistress would reap what they'd sown tenfold. and I would be there to personally ensure it happened, no matter how ugly the truth became. The next few days were a whirlwind of carefully laying the groundwork for my revenge. I was like a woman possessed, my burning desire for vengeance against Martin fueling my every move. Step 1 was gathering as much indisputable evidence as possible of his infidelity and dodgy business dealings. Terry pulled through in a big way, using his security contacts to help me obtain incriminating documentation, phone records, bank statements, even surveillance footage from some of the hotels where Martin and Avery had their sordid trysts. As the damning pile grew, so too did the churning in my gut at the sheer extent of Martin's lies and betrayal, but I refused to let heartbreak or nausea deter me from my path. This was about justice, pure and simple. Next, I addressed the financial side. If I was going to serve Martin his long overdue karmic comeuppance, I needed to be financially untethered from him. Thankfully, in my editing work, I'd cultivated a network of lawyers well-versed in high-stakes divorces. One lunchtime meeting was all it took to set the wheels in motion. "Here's what we're going to do," Rachel, a pit bull of a divorce attorney, stated bluntly as she pored over the evidence. "You lay low. Keep gathering anything and everything you can implicate that sleazeball with. In the meantime, I'll get all the paperwork drafted for a no-contest divorce filing." "No contest?" I balked, anger flaring within me. "Are you kidding? After all he's done, that lying, cheating sack of shit should be left destitute on the street." Rachel held up a calming hand, unruffled by my sudden outburst. "Easy there, killer. Just trust me on this one. File no contest first to get the ball rolling. Once we're in court, that's when we bury the bastard under an avalanche of proof about his misdeeds." Her icy smile then was one of pure predatory confidence. "By the time I'm done with Martin, he'll be lucky if he can afford a cardboard box under an overpass." I couldn't help but smirk back, some of the weight lifting from my shoulders. With professionals like Rachel taking up the cause of securing my future, bringing Martin to his knees was beginning to feel like an inevitability rather than just wishful thinking. A few days later, the plan fully took shape when Terry called with a hushed update. "Got a bead on their upcoming meetup location. The Topaz Grand Hotel downtown this Friday night. Deluxe suite and everything." I felt bile rise in my throat, imagining the lavish setting where Martin would doubtlessly consummate his sickening affair yet again, all while lying, smiling to my face about working hard for our future family. "We'll be there," I said with conviction. No more suspicions or accusations. It was time to catch that bastard red-handed once and for all. They're not going to know what hit them. Terry chuckled darkly. "You got that right. I'll get the gear prepped to, appropriately document the occasion when it goes down." "Good. They're going to regret the day they ever crossed me." I could almost see the smirk in Terry's tone. "Sure, hope that sleazeball lawyer is ready to go full scorched earth once we hand over the, production materials from this sting." A savage grin split my lips as realization set in. By this time next week, the plan for annihilating Martin's entire pathetic existence would be an unstoppable force. "Don't worry," I replied with feral certainty. "Once the truth comes out, there won't be a soul alive who'll want anything to do with him or his whore ever again." My fist clenched hard enough to leave marks as visions of their imminent downfall danced before my eyes. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the sordid crimes. Soon, oh so very soon, Martin and his mistress would pay for every last sin 1,000-fold. No mercy. No turning back until total, righteous vengeance had been achieved. Friday night arrived with the weight of a looming storm. I could feel the electricity in the air, that tense sense of anticipation before everything goes to hell. Fitting, given the Category 5 reality check I was about to unleash on Martin and his mistress. Terry picked me up in an unmarked van, the back already kitted out with an array of audio-video gear and a bank of computer monitors. As we pulled up across the street from the Topaz Grand, my eyes were immediately drawn to the opulent high-rise. "The bastards have the presidential suite on the top floor reserved," Terry muttered, watching my face closely for any trace of hesitation. When I simply clenched my jaw and nodded, he let out a low whistle. "Damn, guess Martin's been spreading the wealth from those shady property deals around." "Don't worry, it'll all be stripped away from him soon enough," I replied icily. We spent the next few tense hours painstakingly setting up the surveillance equipment and running through our plan one final time. As the evening crowds thinned out on the street, Terry's voice suddenly crackled over the comlink. Got eyes on the lovebirds entering the lobby. My stomach clenched as I peered out to see Martin striding through the revolving doors in a pressed designer suit, hand in hand with a gorgeous young woman I could only assume was Avery. She looked every inch the pretentious socialite trophy in a skin-tight cocktail dress and dripping in gaudy jewelry. "Copy that," I replied, throat dry. "We're going in hot in 5. Moments later, Terry and I burst from the van, sealed in low-profile tactical gear, body armor, tinted helmets, the full 9 yards to avoid being immediately recognized. From there, it was a whirlwind of dodging hotel security and stunned patrons as we slipped inside and blitzed our way up the service elevators to the top floor. My heart pounded like a jackhammer as we reached the ornate double doors to the suite. Terry checked his watch, gave me a single nod, then smoothly kicked one door in with bone-crunching force. "Police, don't move!" he bellowed in a voice so gruff and commanding it was as if a different person had emerged. The scene before us was sickening, and sadly also exactly what I'd pictured in my darkest imagination. There was Martin, sprawled naked as the day he was born across rumpled silk sheets, his equally nude mistress draped over him in a salacious position. They jumped apart like startled cats, eyes wide with shock and fear. "Who the hell are you people?" Martin stammered, struggling to cover himself. "You liar!" I roared, ripping off my helmet as I stormed forward. "You cheating, thieving bastard! Did you really think you could get away with all of this forever?" The color drained from Martin's face as recognition dawned. "Lila? What are you doing here?" "Exposing you and your whore for the subhuman filth you are," I spat with venom. "Terry, get the cameras rolling so we can capture every last second of this disgusting affair for the record." Terry grinned like a wolf and produced a camcorder, the blood-red recording light blinking as he slowly swept the lens across the den of sin we'd uncovered. Avery whimpered, clutching the sheets feebly in a pathetic attempt to cover herself. Wait, Lila, please." Martin scrambled off the bed, stumbling towards me with wild, pleading eyes. "This isn't what it looks like, I swear. Everything I've done was for us, for our future." "Future?" I laughed, a bitter bark of contempt. "What future did you possibly think we could have after betraying me like this? Sleeping with this 20-something gold digger behind my back for God knows how long?" Avery flinched as if struck at the insult, opening her mouth to protest only for Terry to rudely jam the camera in her startled face. "You don't get to speak, sweetheart, not after willingly spreading your legs for a lying, cheating sack of scum like Martin here. Smile pretty for the camera, though. I'm sure the footage will look great on the evening news." That certainly shut her up, fresh tears pooling in her eyes as she hunched miserably under the weight of her shame and disgrace. Heart racing, I rounded back on Martin with fire in my eyes. "You want to talk futures? Then how about this? Once I take this irrefutable evidence of your infidelity straight to my lawyer's office Monday morning, our marriage will be over. Done. Finished." Martin's throat bobbed as he visibly paled. "No, Lila, honey, please just let me expla. I don't want to hear another word out of your lying mouth," I shouted him down, wincing as my voice cracked with the force of my fury. "You've swindled me, our community, even the freaking planet with all your greed and corruption for the last time, you bastard." Terry loomed over my shoulder, silently training the camera on Martin's stricken face. "You're done," I hissed through clenched teeth. "And God help me, I'll make sure you lose every last ill-gotten penny to your name once the courts get a hold of the evidence we've stacked against your slimy ass. Maybe jail time, if I'm lucky." As if to drive home the point, Terry shifted and angled his camera lens down Martin's petrified body, the crimson recording light bathing his shame in bloody hues. "Nothing to say now, big man?" Terry sneered. "No last quips about how your little sugar baby there keeps you satisfied? Go on, tell the camera what a great investment of an affair she turned out to be." Martin could only sputter wordlessly, all traces of ego and arrogance shattered. He was finally seeing the beast he'd awoken in me, and there would be no escaping its wrath. Lip curling in disgust, I turned away and headed for the exit. "Consider yourself officially served divorce papers, Martin. Don't worry, I'll make sure you two love rats have plenty more appropriate accommodations set aside soon enough." With that parting shot, I was gone, leaving the sniveling, broken remains of my cad of a husband to fully understand just how profoundly he destroyed everything we'd once held dear. The street outside was a blur as Terry and I hastily made our escape, his gleeful laughter ringing in my ears. Between the rock-solid documented evidence and Martin's own self-incrimination, the battle to secure my vengeance had just been won in one fell swoop. The war for his total ruin, however, had only just begun. Over the next several months, I waged a merciless, one-woman war of attrition against Martin and the pathetic remains of his shattered existence. The first salvo came mere days after the events at the Topaz Grand, when I strode into Rachel's office and unceremoniously dumped an encrypted hard drive filled with the irrefutable video evidence of Martin's affair onto her desk. "My God Almighty," the normally stoic lawyer muttered as she scrolled through sample clips, her expression wavering somewhere between sickened and delighted. "I've represented some lousy bastards in my time, but this is a new low even for scumbags." "Can you use it to bury him?" I asked calmly. "I want that whole empire of slime he's been building through insider real estate deals brought down on his head." Rachel flashed her trademark predatory grin. "Oh, honey, you just leave that worthless sack of crap to me. With this," she gave the hard drive a gentle pat, "Martin won't even be able to afford the cardboard box I joked about before. I'm talking complete, utter, scorched earth professional and financial ruin." And just like that, the divorce proceedings were kicked into maximum overdrive. Another heavy blow landed when I also took my grievances public, leaking the video evidence along with detailed breakdowns of Martin's illicit business dealings to every media outlet in the tri-state area. Within days, Martin's face and the sordid details of his betrayal were broadcasting into households across the nation. The embarrassing revelation of his tawdry sex acts alone would have been a kill shot to his professional reputation. But coupled with hard evidence of shady backroom deals, redirecting housing funds, and gentrifying entire neighborhoods like a virus, it was a towering inferno of outrage that quickly engulfed every aspect of his life. Most crucial were the legal ramifications. The deluge of information I'd provided opened the floodgates for a tidal wave of lawsuits, criminal indictments, and civic investigations that swiftly set upon dismantling every corrupt piece of Martin's real estate empire. Meanwhile, Avery was quickly tossed aside like a used rag once her involvement went public and she lost any shred of usefulness to Martin's ambitions. The poor, naive girl was left only with the shame of being characterized as a brainless socialite mistress chasing rich older guys. One by one, every property deal, investment portfolio, and business relationship Martin had cultivated crumpled to dust under the scorching judgment of litigation and public scrutiny. All his material wealth bled away in a relentless barrage of legal fees and back payments levied by the karmic justice system. The final, most personally satisfying death knell came when Rachel called to triumphantly inform me that the courts had ruled overwhelmingly in my favor on the divorce settlement. "Congratulations, Lila. We just relieved that swindling lowlife of every conceivable penny and asset he ever scammed his way into owning." I sat in silence, digesting her words, all the fury and grief finally coalescing into a strange sense of resolution. "So that's it then?" I asked at last. "He's going to be left with nothing?" Rachel chuckled darkly on the other end. "That's an understatement. Let's just say even the most generous of homeless shelters wouldn't take Martin in once I'm done burying him under the financial crater we just detonated on his head." For the longest moment, I felt absolutely nothing. No joy, no lingering resentment, just stillness. The emotional storm fueling my quest for payback had well and truly passed. "Good," I said simply before politely ending the call. Then, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, my shoulders slumped as the weight of my turmoil finally lifted. Martin was no more, just an unpleasant speck of cosmic debris drifting aimlessly through the void of his own making. He had willingly sacrificed everything, his marriage, dignity, career, and future, on the altar of depravity and greed. All that remained was to leave him there, powerless as the fires of consequence raged all around. I was free to move on and live a life unmarred by his betrayal, free to pursue joy and fulfillment once more, if I so chose. Whether Martin managed to escape that blazing hell of his own making or not no longer mattered. My personal demon had already been slain. In the months that followed my total victory over Martin, I found twisted amusement in silently observing the smoldering wreckage of his pathetic existence. It began with the inevitable, his sad little mistress Avery wising up and fleeing the second she realized there was no longer any status or payout to be leached from their sordid dalliance. All that remained of their once passionate, sinful love affair were snippets of security cam footage showing them screaming venomous insults, before Avery stormed out of their sad apartment in a huff. Public humiliation, it seemed, had cooled the young bombshell's ardor quite effectively. Meanwhile, the multi-million-dollar legal settlements I'd won against Martin in divorce court ensured he was left scrambling and debt-ridden, his previously lavish life in ashes. Within weeks, the high-rise condo he'd wasted no time installing Avery in after leaving me was repossessed to help cover a fraction of his mounting penalties. All his ill-gotten assets, the luxury cars, the real estate holdings, even the vulgar art collection he'd amassed as sickly trophies of his wanton greed, were quickly liquidated to pay down the debts. Poetic justice at its finest. Speaking of which, the deluge of criminal charges that rained down in the wake of the affair's exposure also stuck. There was simply too much incriminating evidence of Martin's corporate grift and involvement with organized crime's real estate rackets for even his highest-priced legal team to salvage anything. That alone brought the petty man ego-shriveling shame for years to come, I'd wager. Forced to languish in a 6x8 cell, surrounded by the very same convicted thugs he'd made backroom deals with, seemed a fitting penance. There was one amusing incident in particular about a year into his sentence. A news report detailing how Martin had been stabbed by a fellow inmate after his identity as a wealthy corporate stooge came to light. Apparently, landing in prison broke is one of the quickest ways to get targeted by hard cases with a bone to pick against the moneyed elite. I couldn't help but chuckle darkly at the irony of it all. He'd invited such gruesome consequences onto himself through his own disgusting pursuit of material excess and debauchery. Part of me did almost pity the worm, if only for a fleeting moment. Though I understood Martin was reaping merely a fraction of the total devastation he truly deserved, focusing on him was a waste of additional energy. The real satisfaction came in cutting him out of my life entirely like the cancer he was, and moving on to brighter days. For instance, with a vast financial settlement burning a hole in my proverbial pocket, I took to indulging in little utopian projects close to my heart. Things that made me feel like I was truly giving back and helping uplift the community Martin had spent years trying to pervert and sell off for profit. The first and most cathartic of these endeavors came in the form of a youth community outreach center, providing hands-on mentorship programs, skills training workshops, and safe recreation spaces for disadvantaged kids and teens in our area. All hosted in a refurbished complex Martin had once scoped out to potentially raise for more gentrification. The grand opening was a particularly smug F.U. to Martin's memory. I'll never forget watching the inaugural ribbon cutting alongside the mayor and local education leaders to raucous cheers and applause. The bright green banners with the center's name, 4-Person Family Outreach, flapping proudly in the breeze. So much for his ego-driven delusions of covering every square foot of the city in overpriced, bourgeois condoplexes. My proudest accomplishment was built on the remains of his greed in a beautiful twist of fate. The uplifting work of helping shape young lives and foster a new generation of civic leaders quickly became my guiding purpose. I found the experience so empowering and rewarding after my personal trials that I decided to double down, reaching out to urban planning committees and local universities to establish more development initiatives aimed at ethical, low-cost housing solutions for the increasingly displaced working class. Images of the insufferable Avery haunted the back of my mind each time I put pen to paper on these lofty ideas. How she had weaponized her charms and affluent background for such mercenary, destructive ends alongside Martin. Where she saw only dollar signs, I aimed to cultivate a revitalized sense of community and public good. Perhaps that's why, a little over a year after the dust settled on my revenge plot, I decided to undergo one final confrontation when fate brought Avery and I face to face again. I'd been strolling home from an outreach center meetup, proudly wearing one of the branded t-shirts sporting their Fostering Futures slogan. A familiar svelte figure in haute couture emerged from a nearby artisanal coffee shop, eyes downcast, lips pursed sadly. At first, I didn't recognize the disheveled, hollow-cheeked brunette, not until she met my curious stare and her eyes blew wide in shock. "You!" she hissed in a tone dripping condemnation and fear. Clutching her handbag close like a lifeline, poor little rich girl Avery began backpedaling away in blatant self-preservation. "Oh, God, please, you have to understand. I never thought things would spiral so far out of control with Martin. It was all just a stupid, childish game to me until—" "Save it," I cut her rambling short with an icy glare. The sight of the woman who had selfishly and casually helped uproot my life sparked a fresh tinge of revulsion. Your sordid little affair caused enough misery and destruction. I have no interest in whatever half-baked rationalizations you've concocted to absolve your sins. She flinched, eyes downcast, but seemed to steel herself with a slow, steadying breath. Then let me take this chance to apologize. Truly and sincerely. What we did to you, what I enabled Martin to do through my foolishness, it was unforgivably cruel and wrong. I'll regret my role in it for the rest of my days. My jaw clenched as a fresh wave of memories resurfaced. The heated screams, the scalding tears, all the anguish and carefully cultivated vengeance that had once consumed me so completely. Staring at this wisp of a woman with the audacity to seek even an ounce of absolution, I felt an unfamiliar chill of indifference. No catharsis. No fiery anger. Not even pity for her fallen status and circumstances. Nothing. You're right. It was cruel, I said simply, already beginning to turn away. But I've moved on to much better things now. Positive things that will impact the world in meaningful ways beyond just the two of us. For a moment, Avery looked as though she wanted to speak further, but an invisible current seemed to sweep through me, imparting a deep truth. This woman held no more power over my serenity or future. The slate had been wiped clean on that sordid chapter of my life, replaced and redirected towards nobler pursuits. To even continue wasting breath acknowledging Avery's part in it would only serve to stain that progress. So without another word, I simply brushed past the ghostly relic from my traumatic past, leaving her broken spirit and desperate need for closure behind to slowly wither on its own. Just another hazy shadow fading further into my rear view with each step closer to the bright future ahead. The bustle of eager young voices greeted me as I strode into the 4-person family outreach center, one sunny afternoon a year later. A fresh swell of pride bubbled up as I took in all the vibrant murals and youth activism posters lining the halls. As promised, this sanctuary had grown to become my true life's work, providing disadvantaged children and teens a secure springboard to educational opportunities, creative outlets, and positive peer role models that could set the tone for success. Things I had tried so hard to foster each day teaching at the local high school before Martin's lies derailed my life. "Hey, Miss 4-person, over here!" An excited chorus of greetings snapped me back to the present. Over at the center's front desk, a lively gaggle of student volunteers were gathered around a monitor. Teens I immediately recognized from the culinary and graphic design tracks we offered. "We're just putting the final tweaks on the new logo and slogan treatments for our upcoming outreach rally," the program coordinator explained with an infectious grin, catching my curious look. All their own original creative work to help draw even more new recruits into the fold. As the vibrant display concepts blossomed across the screen, each more colorful and compelling than the last, I couldn't help but beam with pride. This kind of grassroots, civically engaged expression was exactly the empowering mission I'd had in mind when dreaming up the center in the aftermath of my divorce. "Phenomenal work, everyone," I praised warmly to a chorus of cheers and high fives. Each unique emblem, emblazoned with the ideals of growth, community, and hope, punched straight to my core. This was living, breathing proof that community goodwill and equity could blossom even in the unlikeliest of places, that rising up to fight for a brighter future was as simple as fostering the right support systems and spark. It was a sobering reminder of just how far I'd come since that nightmare chapter with Martin first began. My marriage of nearly a decade, gone in one fell swoop of betrayal and self-destruction. But from those ashes, an even deeper commitment to raising up those around me had taken firm root and bloomed, not to mention a steely resolve in fighting for a more just, equitable society where the callous, unchecked hunger of greed and exploitation held less sway. As I circulated the room, trading jokes and insights with the beaming teens, it felt so utterly freeing to let my guarded walls down and simply connect. Mentor and be mentored in turn. Strive for a cause greater than any singular person or material gain. Could this level of open, honest exuberance have flourished if the vicious downward spiral of my former marriage had never occurred? Perhaps not. But looking back, I found less and less time afforded to such melancholic thoughts. That life had burned to embers. This, the service and human connections fostered every day in this thriving community hub, was my reinvigorated reality now. My family, my future. There's someone to see you, Miss Four-Person. The program coordinator called out with an easy grin, gesturing to the front lobby. I think he's hoping to, enroll in some of our services, if you catch my drift. I whipped around in confusion, only to pause as the figure stepped inside. There stood Martin, visibly aged beyond his years and haggard in ill-fitting clothes. Haunted eyes roamed the vibrant space in a mixture of awe and trepidation, as if marveling at an alien landscape. For a long stretch we simply drank in the sight of one another from opposite ends. Him, a shell of a man utterly broken and exiled from mainstream society. Me, a pillar of communal pride and compassion whose life had only begun anew after burying his toxic influence. Not even the faintest ghost of our former lives together flickered behind his pitiful gaze. Just hollow shame, and if I squinted hard enough, perhaps the faintest glimmer of plea for atonement. It was a far cry from the arrogant, callous lout who had so easily dishonored our marriage vows to chase blind arrogance and material gain. Now he looked every bit the wretch, stripped bare, humbled down to the very bone with nowhere left to hide his sins. As if auditioning one final desperate time for my forgiveness and reprieve. A harsh, bitter chuckle bubbled up from my chest before I could contain it. Poor, pathetic Martin, still so utterly blind to the mountain of growth and positive change that had reshaped my life, while he was left with nothing but solitary pain and regret. Glancing back over my shoulder to the sea of bright, shining faces, my hand reached out instinctively to clasp one of the student volunteers' shoulders. This life, this promise for countless inspired tomorrows still waiting to unfold. How could I consider for even a moment sacrificing all of that tranquility for such a hollow, draining presence? Are you here to enroll, mister? I asked carefully, baiting the hook, though my voice remained disarmingly level and almost amused. Looking to join us in our mission to help build stronger families and civic involvement in the community? For a moment, Martin's mouth worked soundlessly, searching for words. Then at last, a brusque shake of his grizzled head. No, his voice cracked, graveled from some darker vice or self-neglect. Just to speak with you, if you'd even have me after. The sentence trailed off, but I recognized the silent plea underlining his request all too well. One final bid to unburden himself of regret and sin from the target of his worst transgressions. One last foolish hope at reparation for the sake of his own desiccated soul. Smiling sadly, I squeezed the youth's shoulder once more. Sorry, but you and I have no business to attend to. Not anymore. Martin's face fell as I leaned in conspiratorially towards the other volunteers. Let's double-check our security protocols first chance we get, yeah? I'd hate for an unstable vagrant lingering nearby to disrupt the good work we've got firing on all cylinders here. Crestfallen but seemingly unsurprised, Martin simply stared on as the once familiar woman he'd trashed issued her final dismissal. No emotion registered in those dead eyes, just a shade of a man left adrift. Come on, everyone, I called out brightly, leading the way down the corridor in the opposite direction. Why don't we adjourn to the media center and take a crack at our mission statement redesigns next, As the team eagerly followed my lead, a cavalcade of bright smiles and cheery banter overtook the hall. The brief, hollow detour into my harrowing past already banished to make way for vibrant new horizons. Martin never did react. By the time I chanced a single glance backwards, his solitary figure had already slunk out the front doors, possibly to wallow another lifetime, never to cross my plane again. I felt nothing as he departed. No joy at his surrender, no sorrow at his despair, just a queer, dull ambivalence. The man now existed as little more than a ghost to me, faded and decrepit, his miserable specter incapable of tainting my hard-won bliss, even if given 1,000 more aimless attempts. That hollowed-out, broken husk wasn't my concern anymore. Never again. My path forward only contained room for the radiant futures ahead. Building up those bright flames of potential into a world-shaking roar was the only quest left worthy of this strange, wonderful second life of mine. And as I slipped into the media center among a roaring chorus of creative discussion and passionate ideas, the echo of Martin's pitiful existence was forgotten anew, just a bad dream slipping further into the rear view, fading out from reality with each fresh step embracing the light.